be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 4 of the Clinically Average Podcast. As always, I'm Wolf, and here my heterosexual life partner is Patrick.
That's me.
That's him right there.
That's me.
And today's topic is going to be, can people truly change? Can they truly change?
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe,
Calm down.
comment.
We got to just figure out how they go about doing that.
All right, well, how do they do it?
I mean, it's not super easy.
Well, how do they change?
Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
We have a whole hour podcast and a blog that talks about it.
I thought we about wrapped that up 30 seconds, but
A new record.
speed trial run podcast now.
Just a prank, bro.
Just a prank, bro. All right, so how do people truly change?
That is a complicated question.
Okay.
Luckily, we're here for an hour to talk about complicated stuff.
With our big brains.
Medium-sized brains. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Clinically average sized brains.
But I do have some bullets here. We can open with that, and then we'll slowly, meanderingly overanalyze them as we go through it.
Okay. Well,
But,
lay one on me.
But I laid out here some of the key determining variables that can be a catalyst for people to change or not change. One being determining their nature versus nurture dynamic. Are they naturally more introspective? Are they capable of taking accountability? Do they have mental disorders? That's a big one. Mm-hmm. Have they gone to or are open to therapy? Because even just being open to the idea of it is a step.
Sure.
Do they abuse substances? Have they suffered abuse or trauma? How do they respond to adversity and criticism? And what kind of people do they surround themselves with? And I could go on for a much longer list, but those were the kind of, off the top of my head, variables I kind of used to open up with.
Okay. So we're going to establish the main point that people can change.
Yeah, and I want to talk about why I even did this topic, because it's kind of weird we're doing these we're middle of October, getting towards the end when this releases, but we're doing before. But I wrote this middle of July, maybe. And it came from a conversation I had with somebody where they were very adamant about the fact that, and they were very cynical in their tone, people don't change.
Okay.
And I've heard people flippantly say that over the years, and it's that's just, I feel one of the most categorically untrue statements you can make is people don't change, because the one constant in the world is change. And even if people aren't changing for the better, they're always changing.
Well, I think that comes with the same kind of people who take that as a negative, because if you ever been talking to somebody or catch up with a long lost friend, they're just like, "Oh man, you've changed."
Or the opposite, you'll say maybe flippantly, "Oh man, they really haven't changed at all."
Yeah,
they have.
Well, that's the point off of that. It's "Oh man, you've changed. You're supposed to."
Yeah, you are supposed to, and even those that you would maybe flippantly disregard as they've not changed, they have. But maybe it's your expectations of that person
to change more,
and you're disappointed that somebody hasn't. They just still seem fairly immature or irresponsible. So you'll make this, assessment of their character that they haven't changed.
So, well, why don't we jump into that real quick before we go? Because I know we have a lot of content on how people change and how to change. Mm-hmm. But what are a couple quick points on when people do stagnate? Why wouldn't a person change?
Or not change at a big rate, very, very slowly change, and maybe not in the best direction. Or, you can change backwards.
Sure.
People can deteriorate, they can go backwards in their progress. So, I mean, do you have a specific point you want to get to? Because that's the whole point of this is a lot of these are reasons why people kind of don't change.
Okay. Well then, yeah, we'll just jump off with. So I think the first one you have here is the nature versus nurture dynamic.
So yeah, we can go into that. So I guess first we could just even, like I said, love definitions, so we could like say what everybody's heard the phrase nature versus nurture, right?
Yeah.
I would assume.
Some people get tripped up on it.
But like nature is what affects our biological and genetic predispositions. So your physical, emotional, and intellectual characteristics.
Okay.
That's nature. You're born with. That's the things you're born with.
Okay.
And nurture is your the environmental effects on those same traits. Like it affects the same traits, but it's post birth.
Right.
Like you are born with certain innate qualities.
So you have genetic dispositions for some qualities, which is your nature.
Like the way you look, like your intelligence can be affected. Like these things are all your emotional predispositions. These are
And then your nurture or outside influences.
so like how you're raised, where you're raised.
Is it too generic to categorize them as internal versus external influences?
No, I feel like that would
Your
that checks
nature and
out.
nurture. Okay.
That checks out.
Okay.
So yeah, internal forces would be your nature, and external forces put on you would be nurture. So yeah, I think we've talked about this before, like where people, if you're raised in a situation that is more toxic or just dangerous, something like that, you're gonna have. It's one of those things where like, it's not always the case because you have these like successful people. Like we always hear the sports analogy, like people coming from like rags to riches.
Yeah.
They're coming from like terrible homes in bad environments,
Right.
and
you
then they succeed against all odds.
But you hear that so often, but then people don't look at that's a very small percentage of people who come out of that situation.
And that's kind of what this is about. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like for every one person who makes it out of a toxic or bad environment from the rags to riches, there's what? Another 1,000?
Huge percentage, like because they're outliers for a reason.
Yeah.
So like if you have like a NFL player come out of a bad neighborhood, like he's the one in that neighborhood that probably got out. So I don't know how many people are living in his neighborhood, but that's not a good ratio.
Right.
And you don't have to even look at it from a NFL perspective. You can look at poor areas around here of like the amount of people that just kind of stayed in their poor situation and haven't done much better for themselves. But then you had some people who came from that same they were raised in the same area and then they went to be a lawyer or something like that.
Right.
It's like it's not precluding you, but this stuff is talking about like why the vast majority of people do have a hard time changing. So yeah, the answer to the question of this blog and podcast is yes, people can change, but for a lot of people, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And it's like the idea of like trying to have some sympathy for the people, and like there's so many reasons why. But like I know like back to like why I even started, because I remember I had that conversation with somebody, and they were saying that this is one of those people like they're just making like an emotional statement that they're obviously mad about something.
But they'll stick to it.
It's like the feeling brain is overpowering the thinking brain. There's like, oh, people can't change anyways. It's like, and I kind of got like a little personally offended. They weren't talking about me necessarily, but it was just like, I'm like, man, I can look at me from 10 years ago to now. I'm a completely different person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like that statement because it kind of takes, and ironically enough, the person who is saying it, I feel like I would say hasn't had a ton of
Development
growth over the last 10 years. And it was just like, I kind of made like the quick snap analysis. I think a lot of people who make that statement are people themselves who are not.
Who are stagnant.
Who are stagnant, maybe a little bitter, and taking their shit out on somebody else.
Bitter because of their stagnation?
If they're that self-aware, but I feel like people when they start lashing out at people, when like the feeling brain overwhelms the thinking brain, and they lash out and start talking shit about people,
that they're not
I
necessarily.
feel like a lot of times that's connected to their own insecurity, and that person they're talking shit about is mirroring something to themselves they don't like about themselves.
Okay.
And that's what triggers them to start talking shit about them.
I mean, yeah. So like, people definitely can change. Even if you're in like a similar bad situation, I mean, shit. I mean, what? For anyone who knew me 10 years ago, I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, I get the...
That's a different person.
I get the stark reminder every day. Not every day. I kind of quit doing it. But I know we talked about before, like the Facebook thing where it gives you like on this day in history on your posts.
Good God, I hate
And you
those.
like see your old posts from like 2012, 2013. I'm like, I want to punch that dude in the face. But like, it's not even just like that, because like, I don't even recognize who that is.
No.
And like I've seen like different people like share their memories from like back then, like oh, look at this, and it's like I don't want to.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
not
want to
proud
know
of
that.
any of that. Like,
Remember this night? No, I don't want to.
I had an example of one pulp the other day that really stuck with me. I took a screenshot of it. I was gonna send it to you, then I forgot to because it was so funny. I think we were at work and it was busy, so it got off my mind.
Right.
But it was from like 2011, maybe 2010, 2011, and it was back in the day when everyone just kind of said literally what they were doing on Facebook, kind of like how Twitter, like you're just constantly updating like this stupid bullshit you're doing throughout the day.
Yo, heading out to the homies.
Yeah, that
Hit
kind of
to
stuff.
sell, HMU.
The early era of social media, which I do talk about in this blog. I kind of go on. I'm not going to do it here, but like,
Text the digits.
But my status was, I forget what movie that's from. It's a quote from a movie. It was like, "Time to suck the day's dick." And I took a screenshot. I'm like, if you only knew what your days were going to be like 10 years from now, like, what did you have going on in 2010 that you were sucking a dick about?
Time to suck
Nothing. It was
today's dick.
so easy,
So simple.
And like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, God, you had no idea, you little asshole. I was personally offended by the thing I posted 10
I
years
just
ago.
imagine that scene from Billy Madison where he grabs that kid's face and he's just,
Yeah.
stay here as long as you can.
As you can. Yeah, no, that was the moment I had where I just laughed. So I'm like, what a dick. What, you don't even know.
Those are certainly some of the most cringeworthy and cringe-inducing.
But the idea is, I think that's a good thing.
That you
Like,
are.
if you look back at something you posted
and
in
you're
2013
cringing
and
at
you're like,
those.
yeah, hell yeah, brother. I feel like, oh, are you that confident that 20-year-old you knew anything about anything? I'm not.
I had no idea what was
I don't think
going
I was
on.
dumb for a 20-year-old, but I was absolutely immature. I would say most people in context, if you're 32 and you look back at something you posted when you were 20, I don't think.
No, it doesn't. It does not
There's probably
hold
nothing
up well.
that should hold up well at that point. That's for anybody, me, anyone. I'm not trying to judge.
Okay, so anyone listening to the podcast trying to have a good litmus test,
Yeah.
look at your 10-year-old memories, and if you get cringed out, you're on the right path.
Yeah, that's good. You should feel that way, I think. That's healthy.
It's very healthy.
Because I'd be concerned if you're like, yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, so there's a good introspective litmus test that you can run on yourself.
But like I say in the thing of like the best part about like nature versus nurture, because these are two things that we get saddled with that we don't have control of in the early years, but all you can kind of do is like retroactively identify what those are and just kind of hope and pray they didn't fuck you up beyond all recognition when you're an adult. Because then it's like, oh, I have more work to do because nature versus nurture kind of fucked me.
Well, okay, so how does the nature versus nurture fuck you?
If
You're saying
you have a negative like disposition based on how you were raised in childhood, and like like I said, you're born with some inclinations to act a certain way,
Right.
And those are things you kind of have to. Those are the things you work on when you're an adult, where you identify, oh, I do this thing, and you can trace it back to, oh, this is how I've always been. That's nature. You were blessed or cursed with certain personality traits, and you don't really have much choice in this. So it's like you kind of identify this, and you kind of hope, oh well, I hope it wasn't too drastic and caused me too much trauma and grief.
Right.
But you don't really have any control over it when you're young. It's when you're old. That's when you start noticing these things. You're going to therapy. You're like, oh, yeah, I always have had a history of doing this.
So if you can gain some level of introspective and like self-awareness.
That's the idea.
Okay.
And it's like I talk about it, like some people are in that bullet point is like, what's your level of introspectiveness? Because some people are, that's just a thing. Some people are more or less introspective. I would say that's a nature thing.
Okay.
I don't think you necessarily can manufacture being introspective. You can get better at it, but I think some people are just naturally more introverted, extroverted.
Yeah.
They're on that scale.
It definitely seems like you said, a skill you can develop though.
You can develop it, sure.
Maybe with some professional help, training.
I think we talked about it in the one episode before, and I said I think that's like what therapy is really good for people who do struggle with introspection, because if you're not introspective, you're not like kind of asking yourself questions, and you're not like really going over your decisions and going over things. You're just kind of you're just more doing instinctually what you do.
Yeah.
Running off instincts and stuff.
Sucking today's dick.
Sucking the day's dick. So yeah, no, I think the level of introspection has a lot to do with whether you can make a change or not, because that's inherently what introspecting is you're sitting down, kind of like going over the film of how you went over the day. Like that's like you're reviewing the game.
watching films on how you used to act
How I performed.
and how these things, when you get into certain situations and how you react to them, and how you feel about them, and what actions and motivations come out of that.
Yeah. And like, I know a lot of people don't do that because whenever I start talking that way to certain people, they kind of look at me like I'm a psycho.
Yeah, there's people that just get real uncomfortable.
If I'm like having a, like, oh, you really analyze stuff that much? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I don't think that makes me a psycho. I think it's actually very healthy to be introspective.
Thanks, it's a trauma response.
Maybe it is, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm pretty proud of it.
I'm pretty okay with it. I'm pretty okay with if it is a trauma response.
Yeah, it's one of those things where
If it is, I'm okay. It's now a tool in my toolbox to help me move forward and progress and change positively.
that's the idea behind it. Like, sure, can it cause you anxiety and depression? Absolutely.
Sure.
Because I've dealt with that. Where like, because it's not only like thinking about good things. Whenever the bad things happen, you can kind of maybe go down a dark path and ruminate on the bad decisions and kind of beat yourself up. But this all comes down to we've talked about recently. Like, what's your positive self-talk like? Do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake? That could be like where if you're introspective, but also you're very harsh on yourself. That's not a good combination.
Right.
So that in my case, I had to learn how to stop being so harsh to myself while I'm being introspective.
Because you're able to pick up these negative qualities, but then you beat yourself up over it.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like, hey, that wasn't a great decision. What if next time, if we're ever in a similar situation, what are some contingency plans we can roll with instead of repeating that error?
Yeah, but not, getting down on yourself in the process. Just
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll come out and play better the next game.
And that's a slippery slope that's easy to trip down.
Oh, for sure. I did it for years. I just get stuck in a black hole of like self-loathing and beating myself up.
So it looks like we kind of jumped into that naturally introspective, the next bullet point here
Yeah.
on that one.
What are we on to next?
What are we on to? Are they capable of taking accountability?
I think that kind of stems from how introspective you are.
Again, like with the...
Like, it'll always tie together.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think... I think accountability inherently comes from being introspective.
Yeah, because you would have to understand your faults to then take accountability for them, to then move forward with corrective actions.
Yeah, because it's one thing to even just take accountability, but it's like, how do you make up for... You've been introspective, realized you made a mistake, taking accountability for the mistake, but then how do you actually go about affecting change?
Right.
That requires... Because you can take accountability without actually affecting change.
Right. So it's a part of like once you've taken accountability for something, now you need to there's a point of taking the accountability, but then understanding what that is, moving forward with corrective actions, and not trying to dwell on those situations.
Yeah. That's the combination.
Okay. What was your next bullet point? Do they have a mental disorder? Will that hinder someone from making positive changes in their lives?
Depends on the disorder, and there's hundreds of those. So,
Sure.
yeah, I feel like these are all just compounding. It's like the idea I have is like there's like compounding interest. Like if you are born, with the nature versus nurture dynamic, like let's say you have a good nature versus nurture, like you had a good home, you didn't have any issues, and you grow up, you're going to be a secure adult. More likely you can, change for the positive because there's not that many roadblocks in the way.
Right.
But like if you're coming from a bad home, bad nurture, bad nature, that's going to easily spawn. You're more likely coming from that dynamic to have mental disorders, to be abused, to have trauma. And when these all start compounding, it becomes harder and harder to be introspective, make accountability changes, all these things, because like you're kind of just in that way, you're in a survival mode. People that are living in survival mode, they're not thriving. So like if you're constantly in survival mode, like you're back against the wall and you're just getting through your days, that doesn't leave a lot of time for like working on personal enrichment.
Right. It's
You're working, you're busting your ass, and you're going back to an unhappy home, and you have all these issues, or you're abusing drugs to like cope, and you're hanging out with fellow friends who are in the shit with you, who are not trying to make you better. You're all just kind of commiserating together.
Yeah.
These are all things that are going to make it you're more averse to change, positive change.
So, not I guess not a theory, but like a psychology tool that we use on that. You're familiar, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like that pyramid. Well, for anyone who doesn't know, I'll edit the graphic in here so we can look at it. But it's like there's levels to this pyramid, right? And for you to move up and start working on and achieving the goals and desires and needs of the next level up, you must first have that foundation. So like your first one are your physiological needs. Physiological. Can't read.
I'll get there.
So you need air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction.
The basics.
Once you have these things, now you can start worrying about your safety needs.
But you got to figure if somebody's coming from a bad nature versus nurture, it's likely they are having either some of those are missing or they're just not great quality.
Right. So
So your foundation's already rocky.
Yeah. So if I'm homeless, if I don't have shelter, I'm not going to be worried about my personal security, employment, resources, health, property, because I haven't met these base needs. And then further on and up, the third level is love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. If I don't have a job, if I don't have resources, if I'm
It's honestly
homeless,
probably out of your best interest to even be thinking about that stuff because it's just so far out of the way. It's
Right.
probably more of a distraction than anything.
and again, some people are, because of their situation, because of their environment, because of their nurture, some people are a little further back on the starting line whenever the gun goes off. So now you have more work, more effort, more things that you need to achieve to catch up to these situations. And what this all, in Maslow's, what it works up to is self-actualization.
There you go.
God, I can't read.
That's accountability.
So at the very peak of this is the desire to become the most that one can be. And if you're not meeting basic needs, with or within out of some with, some without of your control, you can't build up to that point.
Well, it's like what we've talked about recent weeks. Like this is like the self-help stuff, like motivation and all that kind of stuff. It's like that shit's lost on people. I think why people get kind of, you can be in comment section and stuff for motivational things. You'll see really angry people, and like they think you're like talking down to them and stuff like that. And I mean that is what it is. Like if you're not in a position to be like doing like motivation isn't going to get you up that ladder.
No.
Motivation alone is not going to get you from like out of the hole you were dug in some cases, not even by your own choosing. That's just where you ended up in the roulette wheel of life.
Yeah.
You ended up in that situation.
That's your starting point.
It's your starting point. Other people have starting points for their head. And anybody who wants to argue that is maybe needs to take some accountability and look into things because it's like it doesn't mean you're a bad person that you're further ahead.
There's a real sensitive and
People get very sensitive.
there's
when
a
you bring this
sensitive
stuff
and
up.
dangerous word to describe that.
I'm not even going to say it. If I know what
You
you're
say the
saying.
P word.
Yeah, privilege.
Privilege.
But there's so many people who get very indignant and angry when you bring that up. Mm-hmm. And like, I have it. I'm aware of it, and it's like it doesn't mean I don't have any problems. Doesn't mean it doesn't. I think people when you say that they think that it like means well my problems don't matter. Like no, your problems matter. They matter to you.
Yeah.
And that's important. But you can still recognize that other people have different problems that are not of the same value of yours or more intensity than yours.
Right.
Doesn't invalidate your problems. But I think when you say that to people, they think that you're invalidating them. And then they get really indignant and like get very upset.
Where does that stem from? Just a lack of understanding, just a level of insecurity.
I mean, yeah, probably some form of insecurity, lack of self-awareness, probably maybe even a general lack of empathy.
Okay.
Because I think empathy is like the thing that you can realize you have problems, but I think if you're empathetic, a lot of times it's the dangerous part of that is you might put other people's needs more so prioritized ahead of your own. There's a balance.
Yeah.
I think some people, it's healthy to prioritize other people's problems. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you care about people, and especially if you are at an advantaged position, that's when things get kind of like tricky when you like tell somebody, oh, hey, you're kind of in an advantageous position. It wouldn't hurt you to help somebody who's below you, and they get very indignant about that. It's like you don't have to, but like, the fact that you're so against the idea of it, it's like that's kind of weird.
I mean, that person can also, well, yeah, if they're so against it,
Like, I
that's
pulled myself
definitely-
by my bootstraps and did it. They can do it too. It's like, did you though? Let's refer to Maslow's again. Did you have all your basic needs met from the time you were born? And like, you were easily going up that ladder at the appropriate ages. Like when you were 12, you were doing this. When you were 15, you were hitting all the milestones.
Did you have a secure household? Like, did you have a house? Did you have
want
food
for it?
every night?
It's like
Did you have a secure and loving
there's a
family with you?
huge percentage of the people who do not have any of that, and it doesn't mean that anything you have is invalid, and anything you earned, you didn't earn. But you can still be self-aware,
Yeah.
and acknowledge it. But some people just like, I'm not even going to acknowledge that bullshit. It's like, oh, okay.
No, I did it. They can do it too. Well, yes, but they got a lot more work and they got a lot more effort. I think and
And then when people succeed from coming like that underdog story,
Yeah.
like I feel like when we watch sports or watch a movie, people love a good underdog story. But then when it's in real life, people get very like bitter about that. Where it's like, oh, why are they people celebrating them and they're not celebrating my thing? It's like, well, let's take into context that they're an underdog.
It didn't take as much effort.
You're Tom Brady. They're Eli Manning. Even though Eli Manning's privileged from a household of like, professional quarterbacks, but in the
That's
world,
a terrible analogy.
But in the
Eli
world of the
Manning is
NFL,
kryptonite.
but in the world of the NFL, that was always he was Brady, but he wasn't. They weren't supposed to win. They were the underdogs.
Yeah,
Like Tom Brady's supposed to win every year.
every year.
So
Every
if anybody
Super Bowl.
beats Tom Brady, they're the underdog.
But that doesn't discount.
So when Brady wins, it's like, oh, whoa, Brady. Well, what happens? Oh, Brady won another one. Is that big of a deal? Like people don't like, lose their shit after the last couple.
Brady Super Bowls.
It's like, oh yeah, Brady won. Well, yeah, statistically likely.
Yeah.
But when the people beat him, everyone goes nuts. Even if you don't watch football, it's like, yeah, fuck Tom Brady. Yeah,
fuck Tom Brady.
Because like you subconsciously want the underdog to win, but in real life, it doesn't always work that way. People are kind of like being ahead of other people, and they don't like seeing themselves as Tom Brady.
Oh,
They're
there's-
winning, but like you're winning.
Everybody has like a superiority complex, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know that they're not the worst off.
Yeah.
Everyone wants that little bit of power. Everyone wants that little bit of control.
They have a name for that where it's like I'm not even gonna try and force it. I'm forgetting. It's like
You're forcing it.
what is it? It's a mentality about like shortage mentality. It's not what it's called, but it's like there's not enough to go around. So like you act like I have to get mine, and I can't.
Resource guarding.
That's another term for it. Yeah, I'm trying to
Okay.
think. There's another term I always hear, but I'm having a complete brain fart
Resource
about it.
hoarding.
But like basically, there's not enough to go around. Everyone kind of instinctually acts like I have to get my slice of the pie, and I'm not too concerned.
If anyone
If
else
anyone,
gets
'cause
their slice.
I have to worry about me. Scarcity mentality.
Scarcity mentality.
Everyone thinks like I got to get it, so like that sucks. They're not getting it, but I'm not even going to think about that because I'm just worried about me.
I have my slice. I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay, maybe this is a bit of the conservative in me. Like, sure. Yeah, I think it's very healthy to prioritize yourself, you and your family. That should be number one. But when you're not prioritizing anything, but everyone else is like actually beneath you, that's getting to a point of just genuine lack of empathy. And we're kind of getting off in the weeds here about this topic anyways.
That's true.
But yeah, basically back to people are starting behind the storyline. Whether you want to admit that or not, take a good look.
They are.
There's plenty of people who
People
are
are.
behind you. There's people ahead of you. You can look at yourself in a situation and realize, okay, I started off with more advantages than that person. That person started off with more advantages than me. It's a spectrum.
Play the cards you're dealt. Play your hand. Do what you can do. And that is also, I wouldn't want that to come as an excuse to anybody. I mean, even if your situation is bad, even if you're not meeting all the needs you have on that first level of Maslow's hierarchy, it's like you can make an effort to start chipping away and securing
At the end of the day, yeah, you're still responsible for yourself. And I do talk about that in the blog where like there's a part when we talk about abuse, like where I think, and tying it back to why I started this, where the person was like being very vitriolic about like, oh, people just can't change. It's like, chances are they were hurt by that person
Yeah.
that they're talking about. So we've all been in a situation where you love somebody or you care about somebody deeply and you can sympathize with their plight, maybe even analyze it and understand why they do the things they do that are either self-harming or harming to the people that love them. but then also be very bitter and resentful because they hurt you. And that's a human reaction that somebody hurts you. I'm now upset with them.
Well, that's okay.
Regardless if I understand why they did it.
You're allowed to be hurt.
So like people do that, but then it's like that you want that feeling, ideally, if you are introspective and all these things, to eventually go away. Like you are, like, I'm not going to Bible thump here. I'm not Christian, but that is one of the things where you forgive people.
Yeah.
Not for them necessarily. That's more for you, because you don't want to keep that shit in you. So like, it is best like try and understand why somebody who does toxic shit and is like incapable of change and they're like doing terrible self-harming things and harming them around them. Like, try and understand why they're doing it. Forgive them and move on.
What? Yeah, there's something in their
If you
situation
can't
that's
help
holding
them,
them
if you
back.
can't help them, I mean, sure, try and help these people. But if you can't, at a certain point, sometimes you got to cut it loose.
Yeah.
Friends, partners, stuff like that. Eventually, at some point, like it's in your best interest to cut somebody loose.
It kind of goes back to that, resource guarding situation.
I mean,
what the hell did you call it? Something mentality?
Scarcity mentality.
Scarcity
but at a
mentality.
certain point, it's self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like
You can-
if
you
you
can-
can help somebody who is trying to help themselves, but at a certain point, when someone's had a million opportunities and they aren't fixing themselves, you're hurting yourself
Yeah.
by trying to help them. They are an anchor that is dragging you under with them.
Right. So that scarcity mentality shouldn't be your jumping off point, right?
No, if you've tried, and I've ran into that situation too with some people where like they got burnt in this situation where they did try and help somebody who was less fortunate, or tried to help one of their friends who was like going through a rough time, or family members who are drug addicts. And you talk about, they get very, very defensive about this kind of stuff. Like, well, I did everything I could. But then they kind of paint everyone who reminds them of their loved one like that as a giant piece of shit. It's like, oh, my brother was a drug addict. Now I hate all drug addicts.
Right.
It's like they've lost all sympathy because their brother caused them so much harm and like caused them so much grief.
Yeah.
That now they've lost all empathy for that entire demographic of people who are like struggling drug addicts, or like, people that are just making constantly bad decisions.
Which is just the other extreme of this.
Yes.
It's like you can't have too much empathy, but at some point you do need to be aware if you're hurting yourself trying to give up your resources and help this
You have
person.
to verify at a certain point if this is a lost cause or not. Are these sunken costs? Are you not? Are you or that person not getting anything back in return, or is it just hurting everybody involved?
Right.
And that's the struggle with people like who don't change or are incapable of changing. Like we're doing here, we're identifying what causes that, like what causes the stagnation or arrested development, and like feeling sympathy for them and empathy for them. But at a certain point, sometimes you do have to like cut the line.
Yeah.
And let them figure it out. Because I think we talked about it even first episode, Lifetime and Dead Time, the whole idea of like some people don't change until they've completely hit rock bottom. But if they have enough support system, even while they're doing terrible things, even when you're doing terrible things, you can find other like-minded people who are also going to welcome you with open arms into the...
To just hype you up and guess.
And then you have validation from you and your other shithead friends.
Right.
So you'll let the good ones go who quit helping you because like, whatever, I have my own support group. But it's not a good support group.
No. If you just fall into that toxic positivity. Wow, we're wrapping all these together here.
It's
Jeez.
almost like these first 4 episodes all kind of tie together in a weird way.
That's crazy.
And that ties into, I guess, the quote that's been hitting me here, where it's you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah, okay.
So that goes into, I think one of the bullet points was like who you surround yourself with, like, because that plays a big part at a young age. That's nurture. It's your family.
Right. So if you come from a disruptive family versus someone who comes from a very loving and secure family, you're going to see a different developmental in those two individuals.
And I should clarify with that, there's always the example that even if you come from a good family or a bad family, you can't discount nature. So, like, there's always the example, like, somebody has 3 kids and they're from a good family. A lot of times, like, one of them becomes a drug addict.
Yeah.
Or one of them completely falls off. One of them does, like, one or two of them are super successful, and the one's a complete and utter failure. But they came from the same setup. Nature plays a big part in that. So, like, you can do all the right things for a kid, give them every advantage, and they might still sink. And then vice versa, you can come from a very bad home, 3 kids from a bad home, 2 of them might sink, but one might end up becoming exceptional.
Right.
Nature plays a big role. It's like it's 50-50 almost, like coin toss. Which one's going to play more? Like,
Well, then your nature and your nurture.
yeah. Like which one's going to have more of a effect on you in your early life, like get you out of your situation or
I mean,
derail you.
Because like even if one is having more effect on you than the other, you're still getting influenced by both. Now, significantly, that can be skewed either which way. But you also have to understand that there is.
I would say statistically, if you come from a good nurture situation, there's probably a correlation to a higher percentage of people, with success rates and stuff like that.
Right.
I feel like that's the outlier in a good home is the kid who becomes a drug addict and
The
like
one who
completely
falls
off. That's the outlier in a good nurture situation.
And then in a bad nurture situation, the outlier
the
is
athlete.
the athlete, the guy who
super
goes,
collegiate, like goes to Harvard.
goes to the league.
Like that. Those are the outliers in those two situations. So I don't think it's the rule. That's just like that's the exception.
It's a trend. It's not a rule, but it's a trend.
I mean, yeah. So I think you're trending if you have better odds if you have good nurture to have a good outcome, and you have better odds of having a bad outcome if you're with bad nurture. Those are the people I always say, like, what's the phrase? Like, they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that's just a very simple way to like kind of wrap up all this up. Where like all these like things, contributing factors like the trauma, the bad nature versus nurture, all these things. These all contribute to these people who just have these like pathological decisions they make. That just is them getting in their own way. It's like subconscious though. That's why it's frustrating because it's like they don't even know they're doing it in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Building off of that, you also have how do these individuals respond to adversity and or criticism? It's like
Once again, I think that ties into it. Like if you're from I feel like that can come in either way. So like there's this concept that like people who are if you're from a bad household and you're from a household where you're coddled, you almost end up in the same place.
Okay.
Which is almost like a level of narcissism. So like if you come from a bad home, let's say you're an only child in a bad home, you're going to think the world revolves around you, not for the good thing, but because there's so much negative attention. It almost traumatizes you into thinking like you're so self-preservational that you become the center of the world.
Okay.
And then if you're only child from a coddled family, you sort of believe you're the center of the world because your every need is taken, like your parents are kind of like your slaves.
Yeah. And your parents kind of put you in that situation.
And this kind of puts both people in situations where they're super like kind of full of themselves, big ego, maybe even narcissistic, and kind of get like humbled as they get older. But like if they don't, they kind of get these are the very defensive people. They don't like being criticized, like because they haven't from a poor family, you've been beaten down your entire life, so you don't want to deal with that shit. Like
right.
Like, but if you're coming from a coddled family, you've been like a god. So who are you to tell me anything?
It's like when your parents coddle you and you come from that place of they put you on a pedestal. You're right. Everything you've made no wrong decisions up until now, and the now point is you stepping into society when no one gives a fuck.
Now you're not special anymore.
Yeah, you're not special. You're not.
But even that's like if you're somebody from like a self-preservational thing, you can have that same thing happen where you've been surviving in a bad condition that you almost get this like big ego because you're like in survival mode and you've been individualized. And you're like, I've gone through so much shit, and then you don't want to hear criticism because like you didn't go through what I went through.
Oh, is that like the meme where the dude's standing in a corner of the party and he's like, man, none of them know.
That's more just being an incel.
None of them understand what I've been through.
That's just being an incel. That's a whole different rabbit hole to go down.
That's a whole episode itself.
We'll eventually do incel stuff. That'll be fun.
That'll be real fun. Jesus. All right, so you're understanding where you come from. You're trying to grab this understanding and build this identity of where you come from, who you are, and what to look out for. And now you're identifying the situation that you're in, and you're identifying the bad trends and bad habits that you have. And now you do want to change. Well, how could someone when someone actively makes a choice that they do want to change, how do they go about that?
I think this is the point where we can refer to last week's episode. Because I would say if you get to that point, I would say you've maybe fixed some of your Maslow's hierarchy.
You've at least secured a level or two more where now you're in a more secure place.
But now you're able to
build
even, like, start
on.
thinking about this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I would say, yeah, that's when you like discipline and like motivation and like all these things start to play more of a role in your life because you're now more regulated. So like, maybe you've done therapy. Maybe it's like maybe this person. Okay, now I'm gonna go to therapy, or I'm gonna.
Well,
maybe I need to get medicated.
Well, now I have the means and the base level to go to therapy.
Yes, like so. I would say yes. Typically, that person has probably either hit rock bottom or has gotten themselves to a point where, okay, now I'm maybe financially or like there's enough stability in my life that I can actually start thinking about these kind of things. Either enough bad stuff has happened, and they've just completely hit rock bottom, and like everyone's ditched them and left them, and they're more resilient because some people might just stay in that hole.
Yeah.
Everybody's ditched them; they just live in self-pity the rest of their life. You see people like that. But if this is one of the people who are like, no, I'm going to make a change now. So it's like either they've hit rock bottom and they're just so determined to get their shit together, they start actually taking it seriously. Or they've just kind of slowly, steadily built themselves up. And now they're just like, you know what? I'm ready to actually think about this stuff and work on it. That's when, like, discipline stuff kicks in.
Okay.
The meat and potatoes.
The meat and potatoes of it.
You just start doing the work.
Find what you want to do.
Yeah, maybe now they found a passion, something they're actually into. Because now they can think about that.
Yeah. Motivate yourself to get it done. Create the habits
So
that you need
the
to.
starting line analogy. So like maybe this person's like just been chipping away, and whereas somebody might have got to a point when they were 22, this person's getting there when they're in their 30s.
Yeah, they're chipping away
Because
to
they
get
started
up
behind
to
the starting line.
Yeah,
They're getting to like where somebody who came from a good home did everything right.
yeah.
They've been doing things right since most of their life. But
Oh,
now this person's
compared-
like, I've just kind of been slowly chipping away.
Compared to someone else's timeline, it's 5-10 years later, but at least now I'm at the starting line.
Yeah, and it's never too late to start making effective changes.
This is true.
So I think that's what it is. I guess I have two more things we could talk on with here because I like these terminologies.
Okay.
Talk about the inner citadel.
Well, that's a good one.
Because I can't just not go an episode without talking about Stoic philosophy shit.
This is a Stoic block.
So yeah, this thing I liked this idea. So they define a inner citadel as the fortress within us that nothing from the outside can perturb. So basically, it's like you just kind of go in within yourself if you're very introspective, and you just kind of like, your personality, your values, but like you're overwhelmed. It's like, okay, I'm gonna just take some time. It's like one of those, I have a mental health day. Not doing anything. I'm just gonna sit at home and think. Just relax, binge watch some dumb like The Office on Netflix or whatever the hell it's on these days.
Trying to work through some problems.
It just works through some stuff.
Get in your safe space.
But but I heard an interesting concept on that. Like, well, what if you don't have a healthy inner citadel?
Okay.
Which is a concept. So it's like, let's say everyone has one, essentially.
Right.
But if, like, once again, if you're like healthy and you might have a very pristine, nice, very welcoming inner citadel you can go hang out in. It's very comfortable, very cozy. It's conducive to thinking. I imagine like my inner citadel is like a big wall of library books with like a nice rug and then like a fire pit.
Well, do you have a leather chair?
Yeah.
Do you have
I'm smoking like a Sherlock pipe.
You have a humidor? Oh, you have a pipe. You don't have a humidor full of cigars?
No. And then there's like a big window. I'm out looking like a mountain range, like it's fall. That's what my inner citadel looks like.
That's awesome.
It's cool. It wasn't always like that. But
We
the
did some
idea is like,
construction on it.
but the idea is here, like, if you have a bad one, it's like like fucking Dracula's castle. There's like people impaled on spikes everywhere, and there's a blood moon ominously hanging over.
I mean, that's pretty metal.
It's metal. I don't know if it's healthy, but like the idea is like a castle is a good form of protection at the best of times. Mm-hmm. But if the opposing army surrounds it and starves you out, it becomes a prison.
It's your tomb.
So if you're trapped in an unhealthy inner citadel, that's where you go when you shut down. That's not a good place to be.
No.
You don't want to be locked in there.
You don't want to become a recluse and keep reverting back into that inner citadel and locking yourself away.
But if your inner citadel is a healthy place that you can go to get some peace and think, and then come back out and attack whatever obstacle is in front of you.
So is it if you're using your inner citadel? If you're using your inner citadel,
Some people call it a mind palace.
oh, I like that.
I'm going into my mind palace. Give me a minute.
If I get in my mind palace, but I use it as a productive workspace to work, to...
Yeah, the idea is to be productive. It's not to, like, shut down. When I
Right.
say, it's not like I'm going to go just like... When I say, like, you're having your mental health day, I think some people have, like, a negative connotation for that, where I'm just going to order a bunch of pizza and binge watch Netflix. Like, if that's gonna get you through the day, I'm not gonna judge.
Right.
Sometimes we have bad days.
But some people make that a routine. I'm gonna have my mental health day, and I'm gonna curl up in my dark little depression
And
cave.
I would say that's more erring on the bad version of an intercitable.
That's your Dracula's citadel.
But there's spectrum to this. Like this is like maybe that one's like where like, oh, I see a day where I binge watch TV and eat pizza. Like I would say that's maybe like your interstitial, but starting to rust a little bit, get weathered. There's some vines growing on it.
Okay.
But it's not full Barad-dûr from Lord of the Rings.
A little bit of
There's no orcs manning the parapets.
a little bit of maintenance. We can polish it back
Yeah,
up.
like it's having a little bad stretch with a rough winter.
Yeah.
We'll get it fixed up in the spring. It'll be all right. But I think if you're in the one where it's already bad, it's like, no, that's like drug abuse. That's like trauma. You're just in there reliving past experiences and like
Just soaking it in.
It's just bad.
wallowing in it.
yeah, you don't want to be in there.
How do we clean up our citadels?
I think that's just the stuff we've been talking about already. Just like
Just consistent. Just keep
as
on.
you like work on these things and like start taking accountability, become more like healthy version of introspection. You know, maybe get therapy. Maybe you need to get medicated. These kind of things. That'll start to like slowly re-strengthen the foundation of your inner citadel.
Okay.
Because like trust me, I'm not speaking from a situation where mine's always been nice. My inner citadel used to be real gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was real bad.
Mine has some empty pizza boxes in it.
I think people use like actually there's a good song. Have you ever listened to NF?
I'm not a fan of that now.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of NF. Some of it's a bit cringy, but he has a song. I think it's called Mansion, where he basically uses this analogy where like each room of the mansion is like a different part of his like psyche.
Okay.
Like if he goes into this room, it's like the abuse room where like, all the bad shit happening. Go in there, like. But if he needs like, it's like each room represents a different emotion.
Okay.
And it's like kind of like it's like a mind palace, like an inner citadel. But in his, it's a dark, gloomy mansion, like the Spencer mansion from Resident Evil.
Is there a happy room in his mansion?
I gotta listen to the song. I think but it's just like it's a dismal song. NF's pretty dismal.
I get that vibe from him.
Even though
I
he's
think
a Christian rapper, he's very dismal.
there's a lot of dismal shit in the Bible.
I mean, true. But usually when I think of like Christian music, it's pretty like uplifting.
Yeah.
His is pretty dark.
Praise,
it's
worship.
just Eminem without swearing. It's kind of what it is. That's kind of That's how I'm being very pejorative about NF. Like I listen to some of his stuff, but like
It's like Will Smith. Will don't have to cuss to sell records.
he's a depressed Will Smith.
Ew, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Like there's something bad, but depressed Will Smith's bad. Like, you see this like the sad Will Smith meme whenever his wife was cucking him. Like it just makes me sad to see sad Will Smith.
No, I like to imagine my Will Smith in the Miami music video, living it up.
Get jiggy with it.
Da-na-na-na-na-na. What?
I feel like we had to bring up the spirits. Talk about Will Smith.
Don't. I love Will Smith.
I love Will
He's
Smith.
a good guy.
I don't care that he slapped Chris Rock. He was being gaslit by a woman who was abusing him.
They'll do that to you.
That'll make you do crazy stuff. I guess another thing I can do here is that would tie it into it is the last point I have here is the idea of purity spirals, which is
The fuck is a purity spiral?
a purity. I'm going to get into that. It's kind of like a more. If you've heard of the term echo chamber, right?
Yes.
So this is like tying into like social media.
Okay.
And this is where people can get trapped. I think we talked about this with toxic positivity, where people can get trapped in this loop of like validation.
Okay. You have too many yes men. You're kind of feeding off that cheap validation that you're getting.
So like even if you're like objectively like failing or doing toxic self-harm or like bad shit to other people,
You're latching on to silver linings.
but you can kind of make your
wrapped
social
in-
media personality, like your brand,
Yeah.
seem a certain way.
But you're just latching on to silver linings wrapped in red notifications. Okay.
That's a good way to do that. So basically, like the echo chamber is the idea like you kind of curate your online community to pretty much just you shout into it, and other people will shout the same thing back.
Yeah.
to you.
Hell yeah, brother.
Like so, whether you're like hardcore Republican, you're in a hardcore Republican group, or like you're super liberal in your group, and
Yeah.
you're just yelling shit, and you're like, yeah, I agree, and like no one's in there disagreeing with you.
That's cool. We all agree.
But the reason and I talk about it in the thing where I think when we got into social media, people thought that was a cool idea. Oh, I can go into this area where me and like-minded people can talk about things. We don't got to deal with dickheads.
There's dickheads everywhere.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But reality,
There's
that's
dickheads
not,
everywhere.
dickheads are everywhere. People disagree with you. They don't even call them dickheads. It's just people who have different opinions than you. It doesn't make somebody a dickhead because they have a different opinion than you. Now we're being just kind of pejorative like to do it, but that's kind of, I think, the
fuck
immature
'em.
thought when we were younger is,
that
yeah,
guy's
this is
a
going to
dickhead.
cure everything. It's like this idyllic utopian online society where we can all just be perfect.
All my friends agree with me, and that's cool.
But that, I think, has, within the years, that's very unhealthy because it's actually very healthy to have somebody kind of push back on your opinions.
It's distorting your reality.
Because that actually, yeah, you're literally distorting your own reality because you're all in here just like fueling this delusion. Even if it's a nice delusion, like if you like it, it's cool, but is it reality? Maybe not. So it's never healthy to not be living in reality. For an extended period of time to be living in a delusion is not healthy.
And don't surround yourself with yes men
Yes, like,
and or women's.
so the idea is like, if you're surrounding yourself with this, like it dilutes your reality, which is not healthy. But also, I compare it to like, if you don't keep going to the gym, you lose the muscle memory. You lose that.
You don't use it, you lose it.
You don't use it, you lose it. Like, it is actually very nice to somebody push back on your ideologies for like two reasons. One, it lets you keep that fresh, like you're being tested.
Yeah.
It keeps you're either revalidating where you stand on this topic and like you're freshening up on it, or maybe someone actually will present you with information that you never had presented to you before, and it actually will change your mind.
Oh,
and
no.
it's not negative to change your mind.
Oh no, I'm right, you're wrong.
It is a healthy
Don't
sign
question me.
It is a healthy sign of intelligence to literally, when you are produced with new information, that you are not so married to your ideology. Be like, wow, okay, I didn't know that. Now I'm going to take that into account.
Well, if anyone on the internet in the year 2020, understand that there's a lot of people who don't get that concept.
Yeah, kind of. That's old news to me at this point. Where I kind of given up on changing people's minds. So like that's the thing where you can ask me, I'm not going to get offended.
This is the entire concept of this episode: is changing people's minds, motivating people to change.
Well, I don't think that is
allowing people to
I
change.
don't think that's my intention. I'm just laying it out there. You can change or not change. I'm just kind of ranting about how I feel about the topic.
People changing.
If you want to change it or not, go ahead and change. I don't think this is a right or wrong thing.
What, to change? I
Yeah,
think change is good.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like all. Like, if somebody's getting offended by what we're saying on here, I'm very glad to have that conversation, but I don't think I'm saying anything offensive that would trigger anybody. I would hope not.
No, but that's one of
That's not the intention. My intention is to come on here and, like, get on my soapbox and, like, tell you you're wrong and you're terrible. There's a spectrum, man.
Are you shouting from the top of your ivory tower that's attached to your inner citadel?
Yeah.
Tell me I'm a dickhead.
Yeah, like I'm Gandalf the Grey up there just fucking yelling stuff in Elvish.
You speak Elvish?
Gandalf does.
That's hot. I like that.
But the idea of a purity spiral, to get to that, is pretty much just like a more specific version of echo chambers.
Okay.
So like once you've already established your echo chamber, now there has to be a pecking order in the echo chamber. So the
Okay.
idea of this is like, so I know you've probably been in these arguments or been in these conversations where you're with a group of like-minded people
Yes.
and you're talking about a topic. And you're all agreeing, you're all being a bunch of bros. Like, yeah, man, fucking totally, yeah, hell yeah, brother. But then you say one thing that is kind of slightly deviating, and you're not disagreeing, but it's more like a semantic argument.
Yeah, okay. The devil's advocate.
People start having like semantic arguments where it's like, oh, well, I believe in this more than you do. Apparently, it's like, well, no, we all believe in this same thing, but there has to be a pecking order. Like, I am the top of this. I believe this moral value more than you do. So we all agree on it's like 99%, and then we're all trying to morally outbid each other for that one last percent.
That's gross.
That's like the virtue signaling stuff. That's like the thing of like, I'm more woke than you are. I'm more this than you are. And it becomes this thing where we're fighting amongst ourselves when we actually agree on the same topic virtually, basically.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, if you even like bring up
like-
one little counterpoint, like, well, maybe this instead of that, like, well, whose team are you on? Like, obviously yours. But then it's like causes strife in a group because there can't be a group without strife. It doesn't matter if you all agree, there's going to be conflict. But that's what the idea of the purity spiral
Okay,
is. Like, even if a bunch of zealots in a room talking about a topic, it pretty much like reinforces you have to stay in line. If you deviate even a little bit, we will ostracize you. And then you see these examples of the red pill stuff.
So not healthy.
like, I don't want to get into this too much on this because this will be like incel stuff. I think this leads into incel stuff.
Okay.
Because I remember back like during the cancel culture, you would see people who were like hardcore on the left, and they would do this. They would kind of maybe get out of step a little bit, maybe kind of like go on Joe Rogan podcast or say something.
This is
and
where
then
they
they would like cancel them. Like the left, like, no, you're not part of us anymore.
Well, this is
And
where
then
they
go
start
on Fox
losing.
News.
Yeah, but this is where they start losing their people. They start losing their audience
Yes,
because
they're infighting.
being too much of a dickhead about it.
Yes, to the point where like we're not fighting anybody because we're in an echo chamber, but we have to fight somebody. So you start manifesting dickheads in your own group.
I understand we're all on the same team. Somebody fucking hit somebody.
Yeah. So the purity spiral is like the extreme version of that, but echo chambers I think are what is like non-conducive to people like changing.
Okay.
Because you get in your own little echo chamber, and even if it's it could be a bad one. So if it's like a bunch of dudes who are a bunch of drug addicts sitting around at the pool hall,
Sure.
that's an echo chamber. None of them are going to shame each other because they're all doing the same bad shit.
But
That's an
there's
echo
that one
chamber.
guy that's like, yeah, I can pump 2 bags.
Yes.
Okay.
And they start one-upping
Yeah.
each other like, oh,
No way, man. I did 3 the other
Or
day.
the one friend's like, I don't feel like doing drugs tonight. Like,
Oh, what? You're sober now?
Oh, what? Your wife won't let you?
Are you clean? God,
But
imagine.
so what happens there? I talk about that where you get sucked into that. So like I use the analogy here. You're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So like your own personal echo chamber. You and your 5 best friends.
Okay.
Which I would say in ours isn't an echo chamber because I think we all have our own distinct personalities. Like we agree on a lot of stuff, but we can have conversations that disagree.
And there's a lot of checks and balances.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuanced conversations we have.
And we'll check each other if we think one of us is being ridiculous, and like that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of people don't have that. Once again, that's kind of our privilege to have a friend group like that.
Don't use the P word.
But
You get canceled.
they do. I use the analogy like we're like, okay, so like say you've fallen, like you were with a good friend group, and maybe you just keep making bad decisions after bad decision, and you're not changing, you're not keeping up with your group.
Yeah.
And eventually, they kind of just leave you behind. This kind of scenario happens. And so, okay, well then you go and you kind of just find the next group that welcomes you with open arms. And
But
it's
is that of a lesser?
lesser companionship is the idea there. You're going to people who are lesser than your previous friend group, but you feel validated by this group. You can get in this group though, and the idea is like, okay, it's like, oh, now you're commiserating with these people. They understand me. Oh, I'm having a rough time. Hit rock bottom. They're gonna commiserate with me.
Right.
The thing is though, say you build yourself back up, and now you start getting the idea that you want to start making positive changes in your life. That's when the passive aggressive comments that you're saying there, like, oh, you're getting sober now?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to go party this weekend? Oh, you want to stay home and read a book? Oh, what are you doing?
Oh, you get a job?
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. So you can kind of get sucked into that where like now you're being socially pressured to stay the way you are.
Okay.
Because people are inherently looking for a tribe, looking for a community.
And people don't want you to leave. People
It's
don't
scary
want you
for you to go out on your own and better yourself because you might actually be leaving a friend group behind in some cases.
Yeah.
Or leaving family members behind. Or leaving a job. Because to better yourself, you might have to shed not just some of your dead skin, but some of the people who are holding you back. And identifying that is a very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So you can get stuck commiserating with these people who maybe don't have your best interest in mind and are just keeping you around because you make them feel good about their bad decisions.
Misery loves company.
Yes, but misery is also very apprehensive about letting you leave.
Misery won't let you leave. Misery
want-
wants to
doesn't
keep
want
you
you to.
here.
Misery's a cold mistress.
Well, no one wants to see, unless you, like a true friend, or you truly love somebody, no one wants to see other people succeed. That's not good TV.
Yeah.
16 and Pregnant was popular for a reason. It's like, well, at least it's not as bad as that.
People do like seeing people doing worse than them or doing just as bad as them.
Yeah.
Because that makes them feel better.
I mean, like that's the old joke. It's like, well, there isn't a TV show on MTV that's 22 and graduated or 24 and successful.
Well, then that also kind of feels like punching down. Like the concept, people don't like, that's why people don't like when you like, if you brag.
Okay, yeah.
So like, even if it's not intended as bragging, so like, for every person who likes when you post something on Facebook about something you've achieved, there's plenty of people who are either, if they don't outright get in your comments or say something kind of passive aggressive, they're reading, look at this fucking asshole. They're saying, I've done it different. I'm like, oh, there's probably somebody who's like, oh, look at Rick showing his arms off in that picture.
Well, I think it's so fucking cool because he goes to the gym.
I guarantee somebody says it, even if they don't say it in my comments or.
I mean, if having a hater and or haters is probably a good indication that you're doing something right.
Literally listened to a podcast. A guy was saying that today. If you have people who are actively hating on you and like hoping for you to not succeed, chances are you must be doing something right.
Yeah.
And that's it almost seems egotistical to say that, but like I think we've talked about this different times. Like, but once you do, but look at the example when you like go out of like because when you get in that friend group, you kind of have a personality. Like you play a character, you play a role in your community, your tribe, your friend group. You have a role. You almost start playing a character.
Yeah.
Just like okay, you're the party guy. You're the fun guy in the group. But what if all of a sudden the fun guy starts saying, I don't want to party anymore. I kind of want to go pursue this career and do this. They're going to bust your balls.
Yeah.
And they might not go, oh, it's just a joke. But that's coming from a place of like insecure. Oh, you think you're better than us? You think you're going to go do something else?
You're a party guy. You're our fool.
You're the fool. Be the fool.
Yeah.
Who are you to stay in your lane?
Stay here. Stay in your lane. Be the fool. Be the fun. We'll go be successful, but when we need you for your amusement, we'll bring you back.
Well, not if they're being successful. They're not doing anything to be successful, but you have the audacity to think you can go be successful or go do something wild, out of character.
Isn't there a term for all this?
Well, the idea of that is lesser companions.
Tall poppy syndrome.
Tall
poppy syndrome. That's
it's
it.
like, once like the one outgrows the rest of the group, they'll try and cut it down.
Yeah, bring you back down. No, come here.
Like, no, you don't think you're not better. And that's kind of thing you see with
stay
like
here.
you hear about that with people like who do become like athletes and stuff that come out of like bad communities.
Mm-hmm.
They'll talk about like people like will like almost actively try and like get very bitter about it or like try and like hold them back because like, oh, you think you're better than us. So,
Oh, you're better than us. You've changed, man.
that
Yes.
kind of
You're supposed to.
Yes, you're supposed to. And that's about the 1 hour mark. That's a pretty good way to end it, I think.
That's a real good way.
Because
to
that tied
end
it
it.
back to the opening of the thing. Look at that.
Hey, I'm not saying we're good at this, but
Happy accidents.
this isn't our first rodeo.
I like to think that if you do enough good things, the universe will eventually reward you with weird things like that.
You know how else you can reward yourself?
How?
By liking, comment, subscribing, following, linking, sharing, listening, blasting. I don't know all the terms.
All that cool stuff.
Just whatever the kids on
Hit the
TikTok are
bell or
doing.
whatever they
Listen,
say.
I'll literally follow the kids on TikTok to hell and back. Whatever they're doing to fix the algorithm, do that. I don't know. Whatever. Wherever you're listening to this or watching it, I don't know. I don't care. Interact with it.
Yeah.
I'm not a computer scientist.
We ain't scientists.
We ain't scientists. Tell it to me straight, Doc. What do I got to do to get on the algorithm better?
Ting.
I like to imagine I had chewing when I said that. But yeah, do all that. Come back next week. Check out the previous videos that are out.
Previous videos, previous blogs.
Yeah, check out the blog. Check out everything. Do it. You won't.
Yeah, do it. You won't.
I guarantee they won't.
Reverse psychology.
Losers. Okay, gotta go bye.
Hey, bye.
I like to be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before I knew. Rewind, take it out of cue. Innocence can be a young man's game. Signed up for the hall of shame. I wish I knew how much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed when we play our roles and ignore the problems. I like to be weighing my patience. Stay up, I feel so outdated. How can we look the other way? Sun is out, but the sky is gray. What would happen if I took a chance? It's always hard at first glance. I don't wanna, but I know I gotta do it. The truth is hard to swallow. I think I'll chew it. wish I knew